Directed by Jeff Wemeister and written by James Krieg, Justice League: Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 2 from the Tomorrowverse does follow alongside the DC Comics in such a beautiful way. Maybe not completely perfectly, but the Tomorrowverse definitely is giving some good payoff to some random things in the DC Comics that you wouldn't expect them to bring in here. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Tomorrowverse's installment of Justice League: Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 2 and how it relates to some of the other movies in the Tomorrowverse, or maybe some of the comics, and just give my thoughts on it. So this installment in the Tomorrowverse actually almost directly follows one of the other movies in the Tomorrowverse, which is called The Legion of Superheroes, in which Kara Zor-El, or Supergirl, was the main protagonist in that movie. That movie is actually a lot better than most people get it credit for. In this movie, ironically, we follow a lesser-known supervillain called Psycho Pirate, whose name is Charles Halstead, played by Jeffrey Arend. And in this movie, as I said, we follow Psycho Pirate, and it is very interesting. He was probably one of the most compelling characters out of everybody in the film, and there were a lot of characters in this film, and some characters that made a surprise appearance, and there will be some light spoilers in this video. There were so many different things and Easter eggs in here that I just didn't expect to see, especially because the first one was not as good to me as a lot of other people liked, but this one was far better. Of course, we have Jensen Ackles and Darren Criss coming back to play Batman and Superman respectively. Meg Donnelly and Stana Katic play Supergirl, or Kara Zor-El, and Wonder Woman. So for those who aren't very familiar with the Crisis on Infinite Earth comic books or the storyline in general, long story short, the Earths are dying. There is something else at play that we will get to once part 3 comes out. But there is something else at play, and then we find that out throughout the course of this movie, or by the end of this movie. And as I said, there's going to be light spoilers, so I won't say what that is. But there is an antimatter wave that is coming through the cosmos that is literally affecting all of reality. Every single universe is being affected by this, and various universes have already died. There are universes that are still dying. As we're bouncing around to various universes, we are also being told a story by the Psycho Pirate, who is conversing with Dr. Fate, who is played by Keith Ferguson. As I said before, Psycho Pirate definitely plays a much bigger role in this movie than anticipated, because yes, he's a villain, but he is not as big of a villain to where I thought that they would make him a focal point of the story. But when you watch the entire film, especially when he gets connected with the other characters, more specifically Supergirl on the Monitor ship, it's mainly the fact that we're bringing in some characters that aren't really shining in live action DC movies, and they don't really get a spotlight that much when it comes to media. And some of these characters like Dr. Light and the Question, they're coming into play, and it's dope. The Tomorrowverse really dug into the DC Comics, into various sections of DC Comics, and decided to provide some decent fan service. So there's a reference in there that was just very interesting, just a nod to something, and there's various nods in this film too. There's a conversation that the Spectre and the Monitor have later on in the film, and obviously I'm not going to get into details, but the Spectre references someone that has actually made an appearance in the first Crisis on Infinite Earths storyline comics, and I'm pleasantly pleased with this movie. There's some gripes that I have, I feel that there sometimes were just so many characters that you truly didn't know like which to focus on. And if they didn't do the storytelling like they did with Supergirl and Psycho Pirate and the Monitor and Batman at times and the Bat Family, if they didn't do the story that way, then it would have just been a jumbled mess filled with characters jumping around, kind of like what it seemed like in the first one, just with less I guess more characters, just different versions of those characters. Aldous Hodge and Liam McIntyre reprise their roles respectively as Jon Stewart and Aquaman. Two great choices for those characters, first of all, but second of all, them being involved in this movie and the story again behind Psycho Pirate and how he played a factor in some of the other films. And when you see, like, it's wild, like how a lot of this stuff is connecting. And watching this movie, it was just so nice to watch this and get as excited as I was because of all the nods and Easter eggs that were in here. There are two other appearances in this movie that are worth mentioning, and you at this point you're gonna know because it's broadcasted everywhere pretty much, and if you just type in the movie it'll pop right up. But I was very, very pleased to see my boy Matt Ryan come back for his role as Constantine, which just proves that Constantine survived the transition from the DCAMU to the Tomorrowverse, because there's a movie in that universe, the previous universe, what's called Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, and that is just, whoa, the end game of the DCAMU. Like that is just real. It's real. And then there's another movie called Justice League, sorry, what? Another movie called Constantine, House of Mystery, where he is just trapped in the time and space, and there's just so much going on in his in between things, and it's a crazy movie. Like, it's really cool, and it just sets things up, and I didn't realize it when I watched it, but it's just such nice payoff to see that Constantine and that version of Constantine that we all know and love is the very same version that we're getting, just in the Tomorrowverse, and it's awesome. And another fan favorite, and somebody I am just, oh my gosh, it was, I saw him and I'm like, what? Threw him in so fast, and the way how he just came in with the whole Bat family, it was just like, oh hey, I'm here, and I'm like, what? And it is none other than the one and the only Terry McGinnis, Batman Beyond, baby. Will Friedle, the original voice of Terry McGinnis Batman Beyond, comes back to play this role, and it's just awesome, and another thing to give fans some nice fan service. The Easter eggs and digging into certain sections of DC Comics that haven't been touched on before and deserve to be, you know, like, just because some heroes aren't like the big names doesn't mean that they aren't equally as dope. You read some of the comic storylines, you'll be like, oh wow, why isn't this a TV show? Why aren't they in the movies? You know, I am excited to see what part 3 brings us, especially after the ending. So, you know, we'll see what happens. But thank you guys for sticking around and watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you aren't subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscribe button and the bell next to it so you can get a notification anytime there's a new video. Thanks again for watching, guys. Until the next one.